my opponent, Lance, and I have agreed that even though the previous panel hugged at its conclusion, we would not be doing that. So thanks. First moment of bipartisanship in this debate. I think it's a great way to start. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks for coming out. Thanks to the paper for doing this. I do think this may be one of the most important elections of our lifetime. And you think of the seriousness of the economic problems that face this country. 23 million Americans are unemployed. We have, for the first time, our credit rating has been downgraded. First administration in our history to have $1 trillion deficit every year and projected for 10 years. It's really unprecedented, the weight that this is putting on our economy. It is really terrifying. 360,000 workers in the last report self-selected to not look for work anymore. Took themselves out of the unemployment lines and out of the active seeking workforce. Huge problems. And so we're going to have these discussions. The Middle East really breaking bad on all of us as we watch the fires rage across the Middle East, with China raising its saber and rattling it, North Korea, Iran, serious challenges to the United States. And it's going to take serious folks after November, whoever wins this election, to try to deal with these very serious, very real, very personal to every person that lives in this county and this entire congressional district, state, and country. When you look at the last couple of years, I've been able to do that. In a very partisan, bickering place sometimes, the United States Congress. As I took over as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, I decided with my ranking member, the Democrat from Maryland, that we weren't going to do that. That we were going to forge bipartisanship and national security and move the ball forward. It was just too important. But we've been able to do that. Yeah, that's okay. You can go after that. Thanks. In the previous 6 years on that committee, the bickering was so bad they never passed a budget. We have passed every budget, and every budget has been hugely bipartisan. All of the budgets that came out of my committee, unanimous. You don't find that in Washington, D.C. I passed 8 bipartisan bills, 6 of which have been signed by Barack Obama in this legislature, 2 in the previous legislature. It can be done. The Washington Post has declared that this is the rare example of bipartisanship in action in Washington, D.C. If we are going to address those very serious issues that are weighing down this economy, that are keeping people from getting jobs, that are keeping our economy from growing, a healthy economic development, we're going to take serious leadership to sit down and work out our differences and move this country forward. I hope you'll give me an opportunity to do that for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me on this? Better yet, can you hear me?
No.
You can't hear me? All right. Because every now and then I tend to have a loud voice. My name is Lance Enderle, and I'm humbled to be the Democratic candidate for the United States Congress. I'm thankful to the Livingston Press Argus, the Voters' Voice, the Livingston County Library System, and the Chamber of Commerce for coming together and allowing the citizens to actually hear the similarities and differences and the ideas that Mike and I bring to the table. Mike alluded to some things that I hope that we get into these issues, because you will see sometimes what we hear isn't what we get. This is a critical election. This is an election that decides whether we get rid of institutions like Medicare and Social Security. These are institutions and they're not entitlements, they're earned benefits, and that's something we need to talk about, bring to the forefront. The other thing that we got to look at is getting into jobs. Mike's been there for 12 years, and yet we haven't had a jobs bill in the last 2 years. Anything worth substance. And I believe that we just lost 250 jobs in Howell at Alpha Tech. If I'm not mistaken, they closed down at the end of the month, in August. When are we going to start seeing job recovery? When? As soon as we quit passing free trade agreements and bringing fair trade into the spectrum. That means producing goods on our borders. And these are the discussions we need to have. As for the war tones in Iran and Syria, Let's get the discussion going. We've already been in an endless war that's cost us trillions of dollars and many lives. And I've yet to hear Washington say we're going to take care of those kids when we bring them back. That's a discussion I want to have. So enough of the introduction. No, I'm not your standard politician. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, I'm a public educator. And I'm tired of my voice not being heard in Washington. Thank you very much.
Mike started, so first question goes to Lance. How would you reform Social Security and Medicare to assure that they will still be there when people are ready to retire? Give us 2 specific examples of what you would reform.
Well, that's a hard question to answer because Social Security and Medicare are 2 perfect programs that over the last few years we found a way to deteriorate. What we need to do is adhere to the rules that were initially stated and make sure everybody pays in, 1. And 2, we don't allow our Congress to raid the Social Security fund to pay for our Chinese debt, i.e. the wars.
Well, just a point of clarification, the actual raiding of Social Security came in 1965 by a Democrat Congress that allowed that money, because it was so tempting, not to be responsible with that money. One of the first bills I introduced was to make sure that the first day of the first year that money get pushed back into Social Security. 9/11, unfortunately, the day of 9/11, I was actually heading to a hearing for that particular bill, and washed over by the consequences of what happened in 9/11. 2 things. Social Security is going to go bankrupt in about 2050. Medicare by 2024. This will be a catastrophe if we don't do something about it. These people have paid in, on average, about $140,000 over a worker's lifetime. If we don't turn this bucket around and give some options for the future, the next generation won't have it. And by the way, it has already been fundamentally changed, unfortunately, by this president, taking $716 billion out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare. And you might not like it, I don't like it either. You should join me in not liking it. Because it's pretty damaging to Social Security. It's pretty damaging to Medicare. It's happening today. 66% of doctors are now saying they won't take Medicare patients, or at least considering not taking Medicare patients after 2014 when Obamacare and the regulations kick in. If you don't think that's serious, talk to seniors. Talk to doctors who take seniors. This isn't happening next year. This isn't happening in 5 years. This is happening now. So what we've said is, let's have this discussion. I think these both have to be bipartisan solutions, clearly, because it divides America.
I think these both have to be bipartisan solutions, clearly, because it divides America like anything we've ever seen. So together, we ought to have a bipartisan commission on Social Security. I think there's some great ways to move forward. But if we don't get to that bipartisan commission, we'll never get a solution. We'll be talking about this in 10 years while we're wondering why Social Security is so bankrupt. Same with Medicare. I think there's some great solutions on the table. They ought to come back with better solutions, and we ought to work this thing out. It's too important for the next generation of Americans, and the current seniors deserve to get what they've been promised.
Lynn, you said everybody should pay in. Not everybody's paying in now?
No. Well, no. Because we've got a lot of issues we have to deal with, like immigration reform, but I've got to address something. You said Medicare would be bankrupt by 2024. That's a little bit better than 2016 if we follow the Ryan Rogers budget. Yeah. Get the facts straight on that. We're selling scare tactics about Medicare. We need to start paying into it, that's correct. We need to hold people accountable. Just as our elected officials, we need to be held accountable. So get everybody to pay in. It's these programs, it's part of the Affordable Care Act, where it's opened it up to many people and created this mandate, which was created by a Republican Congress back in the 90s. Newt Gingrich owns that term mandate, so quit trying to pass it off, Mr. Rogers.
Mike, so what plan for saving this are you looking for? Is that the Ryan plan?
That's one example, and I supported the Ryan plan for a couple of reasons. And it's important to understand, the date 2024 came after the $716 billion were taken out of Medicare. That's the unfortunate thing. You drop the solvency date of Medicare by almost 6 years. That's a huge problem. So one of the great things about the Ryan plan is it put the $716 billion back into Medicare. That's the first thing you got to do. And here's what it did. It said if you want to keep the traditional Medicare that you have, then you can keep it. You can keep that system, even though I think you're going to have a hard time finding doctors that will take it, unless we mandate that they do. It's going to be an awful thing. Or you can take the choice. You can go out, like we have done under Part D under Medicare, and have a choice of your plan. Seems fairly reasonable to me. If you don't like the idea of choice, stay in the conventional Medicare program. At some point, we have to make some change, or it's the economics of this aren't viable. I don't know, I may have the exact number of the backing wrong, but it's about $140,000 paid in on the average lifespan of an average worker in America, and you'll take out well over $300,000 in benefits. This is a math problem. So being angry and shouting and doing all those things sounds great. It will not solve the problem for real seniors who need to show up at a doctor and get good care. Have yours, and your neighbor can have yours, and your grandkids can have theirs.
With this issue for a second question, because both Republicans and Democrats have been pointing to each other's plans as reducing anticipated increases by $700 billion. Is this the basis for a compromise, or does your plan, is your plan more legitimate? Explain why. Mike, you get to start.
Not sure I understand the question, but I'll take it. The $700 billion, if you take that, if it's an actual cut, it has an impact on Medicare. That's just the facts of life. So what happened in the proposed plan was that Medicare gets an increase every year. So you put back in the $700 billion, and then you save money by people who will make choices in the future to move to a choice plan versus the capitated Medicare plan. Now they get to make the choice. You get to keep it if you want, or you get to make the choice. We think that there's going to be a significant savings, and I'll tell you why. Under prescription Part D, there has been a 40% below projection savings rate, and it happens to be a very popular program with seniors. Why? Because they get to make their own choices about plans that affect their lives, and it works really well. The average savings for the average senior is $1,200 a year, and it costs far less than all of the projections. And our argument is, doesn't that plan have some merit to be considered for people who want to make that choice, but not forced to make that choice? I argue you'll get probably more savings, and I imagine the youth of America, given how high-tech they are going to be more interested in pushing themselves into that program than not, because of the benefits they'll have in making choices, and doctors who are going to take those plans because they're solvent and they get paid. At the end of the day, that's going to happen. This is going to work.
All right, if I can understand that question, I didn't understand that answer. But what we'll do is we'll talk about the $716 billion in cuts proposed under the Affordable Care Act. What it'll do for seniors is save each senior between about $695 between 2011 and 2012. It'll also help save $5,000 from, the average person on traditional Medicare will save about $5,000 between 2010 to 2022. With those on higher prescription costs, you'd be looking at saving about $18,000. So we're seeing a savings there through the Affordable Care Act on seniors. Not to mention, Mike had mentioned something about prescription drugs. I'm trying to figure out why in 2003, and I'm stretching back a ways here, Mike, but you voted to limit prescription drug benefits for Medicare recipients. So whose favor are we working for, the pharmaceutical companies, or are we working for the constituents? year's budget, that's $716 billion in Medicare cuts. What you'll find is if you're a senior, and my mom's a senior too, Mike, she's 82 years old and was a public school teacher for 37 years. She shouldn't have to worry about her health care. She earned it. The seniors under the Ryan Rogers plan will have to pay $6,359 on average for the same coverage they're receiving right now. It's on the Congressional Budget Office, Mike. Don't shake your head no. Seniors under the Ryan Rogers plan will also have to pay for medicine out of their own pocket, which right now they'd have to pay for. My mom's trying to figure out why she was switched recently from traditional Medicare to Medicare Advantage. There's no advantage to Medicare Advantage. And unlike ending Medicare, as we know,
Time's up.
I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Let's go on to the next question, and Lance, you get to start this. Do you believe that the Affordable Care Act, often referred to as Obamacare, will reduce the deficit? Will it reduce healthcare costs?
Sure it will. Sure it will. Because when you have a healthier society and people paying attention to what they're doing, being cognizant of their health care and their body's needs, will become a healthier society. When you're a healthier society, healthcare costs will go down. We tend to regulate that as individuals. That's one of those, free will things that we have as human beings, very self-regulatory. So with proper healthcare will go down, especially when we're covering our children. If they're brought up with a proper healthcare system, not worried if they're going to get the proper shots that are needed, whether they may not get dental care or vision. I know as a public school teacher, healthcare is a big problem on top of whether the kids have enough to eat at home. That's one, those are things we need to address. It's a bigger picture than just that little problem. Thank you.
Mike, I have a slightly different question for you. Republicans have said that they want to repeal Obamacare, and often we've heard that it will have a replacement. What replacement would you favor, and would it include items like allowance to keep youngsters on their parents' insurance till age 26 and elimination of pre-existing condition clauses, elimination of lifetime caps?
Yeah, I think we can keep all of those, green light's on anyway. We can keep all of those elements of the bill. And if you look at what the Republican response was during the committee hearing, we had responses. I know there was this talk about Republicans didn't have anything to offer. We did. The problem was it never got a hearing, never got a vote fully on any of those matters. It was pretty discouraging. Because I argued if you're going to take over 300 million people's health care, you better know what in the heck you're doing. And what we have found is that the cost of this program is going to be about $2.6 trillion. That's by their own CBO estimates. Remember, it was supposed to be 800. It's already up to 2.6. We have no idea how we're going to pay for this, and it won't work. There's already up to 6,000 pages of regulation for your health care. Good luck. I mean, this is a disaster. So here's what we said: why don't we do simple things right now? The insurance companies hate it. Why don't we make them compete? Federal law says I can drive down to Indianapolis today and I can buy my health insurance, or excuse me, my optical insurance, my car insurance, my house insurance. It's against the law for me to buy health insurance in Indiana. Why? That's not how we do anything else that we do in life, even when it comes to insurance plans. Why can't I buy Blue Cross Blue Shield in Indiana? Because the federal government says it's against the law to do it. My argument is make them compete. You want to start lowering prices? Go ahead and be able to tell Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'm fed up, I'm going somewhere else. You tell them that today, they own 80% of the market in Michigan. Why? Because you can't go anywhere else. My argument is let's do some very simple things. Liability reform, billions and billions of dollars of junking frivolous lawsuits out. We should get a handle on. Making them compete, we know it will impact the number one reason people can't get access to health care: costs of insurance. Unfortunately, the Obamacare bill has already risen the rates for the average family over $2,000. Already. That happened already. That's what we have coming. And you think it's bad yet? Wait till all the mandates start in 2014. I It is going to be a very expensive, low access program. Yes, sir. It was just one.
I do have follow-ups.
Oh, good.
Mike, as you were answering, you said yes to retaining some of these provisions. So what are you repealing? Is it merely the individual mandate?
No, we think we can do the age 24 by offering plans for folks who want to pay a little extra on their plan to carry those 20 up to 26-year-old. Remember, just the mandate on the 26-year-old costs Ford Motor Company over $20 million. One mandate. That's $20 million. They're trying to get their handles around the cost. By the way, you're going to pay for that more in a car. So how do we do that? We do it the old-fashioned way. We say if you want to buy a rider on a plan, you can do that. The good news about that is between that age of 26 tends to be the healthier population. Those premiums are going to be a lot lower. And that doesn't charge your neighbor for what your needs are. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm big on pre-existing conditions. The best way to do this is high-risk pools and get high-risk pools functioning here in the state of Michigan. We do something similar with your insurance for the accident fund or the accident fund. And so when people hit a certain cap of medical expenses, you got to roll over into the accident fund. They work very similar to the same way. So everybody pays into it. You pay a little bit on your insurance, your doctors pay in, Medicare pays in, hospitals pay in. And what happens is, whatever that cap is, we were using the number 250, but you could actually make it $300,000 or $350,000. You hit that cap, you would roll into a high risk pool. And what that does to your premiums, if you're an insurance guy trying to sell you insurance, I know my only cap is $250,000. That means the premiums go down. And the one thing we want for people to get access is lower cost on premiums. That's the one thing preventing people from getting insurance to see a doctor. And at the end of the day, if that plan does not pay the doctor, you will not get to see a doctor. That's what we have to understand in this whole process. These are great, innovative, community-oriented, and it doesn't step between you and your doctor when you're making decisions. That's the beautiful thing about it. My argument is repeal it, start with this. I will guarantee you rates will come down, people will get access to health insurance.
I have one more for you, Mike. You mentioned market solutions. Does that mean you're in favor of the healthcare exchanges?
You know, the healthcare exchanges were part of the original discussion with a guy named Bro, remember him from Louisiana, the Democrat? And there's some merit in them if they are based truly on a place where you can come and exchange in the free market. Here's the problem. The way they've set these up, you have to get approved prior to that by the federal government in order to sell a product in the exchange. So we already have, as a matter of fact, I just talked to some folks in the dental industry the other day who were telling us, they're asking us to participate in the state exchange here. Would you participate? And they said, well, tell us what the rules are and what we have to cover and how that works. And they said, we have no idea. What company is going to expose themselves in a market where you have no idea what the rules are? That's the problem with the way they crafted these exchanges. You have to have the federal government has to approve your plan. And there are certain things that have to be in it and certain things that can't be in it. Remember the whole kerfuffle about the mammograms a few years ago when that advisory board said you couldn't get mammograms and big kerfuffle, we had to change it? Under this new law, this is what's so dangerous, it should scare everybody in this room, that all the rulings of that board now have the full weight of law, which means, and there's a grading system, A, B, C, and D. And they said A and B and the federal government has to be covered, but C's and D's don't have to be covered, and D's can't be covered. So what they would have done by that mammogram decision is make it a D, which meant you could not even offer a plan in the exchange that covered mammograms. That is why you don't want your federal government running your health care.
My follow-up to you is the individual mandate good policy? We know the Supreme Court said it's constitutional, but is the individual mandate good public policy?
Yes, it's to where everybody is paying into it. And you know, it's kind of sad that we can have this brutal discussion about taking care of people, but we won't have that same discussion about blowing countries up. So what I'm getting at is we will spend all sorts of money on wars and unsolved efforts, but we won't take care of our own citizens. You know, Mike wrote an op-ed recently in the Livingston Argus, and there was a comment about insurance companies making profits. I thought they were non-profits in this state. So why are we worried about insurance companies making profits? They shouldn't be there to make profits. They should be there to administer health care. And that's what the Affordable Care Act does. It starts to bring a little accountability into this program instead of using these scare tactics. I mean, with the pre-existing conditions, there's a couple things that the Affordable Care Act does. Mike brought up that we do have a pre-existing condition clause in Michigan. True story. But if you're forced to leave the state, go find a job, which at least 100,000 people I know in this congressional district have had to move in the last 8 years because of no jobs. That's how they're going to keep their health care. They're going to be able to do that, especially if they move down south where they aren't friendly to the insurance environment. Not to mention, with lifetime caps and whatnot, just imagine this: autism. One word, autism. That's a disability that's protected under your insurance. And if we want to take away from that, how many of your grandchildren and children are going to be affected? Think about them. It isn't about your pocketbook, it's about their future.
My other follow-up for you, Lance, is what aspects of the Affordable Care Act are you unhappy with? It's big bill. Are there details that you would change?
To put it into simple terms, I have not minced any words about it. I want to see Medicare for every citizen of the United States. You'll find I'll answer the question. It's directly and not circumvent with a loquacious answer.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question. And Lance? Okay, I lost track. Let's talk about the deficit. What would you do to address the federal deficit? Would you be willing to include a tax increase in that plan? And would you be willing to cut the military? Be specific about how you would cut the budget.
First, in order to make total evaluation, I have to see everything. Real numbers, real facts. I'm not privileged to that information, unlike Mr. Rogers. One thing I will say, we need to increase taxes on the upper 1% of the population. We need to eliminate corporate loopholes. I support the people's budget of 2011. It was a budget that was proposed by the Progressive Caucus, one of 5 budgets that was introduced to the United States Congress, but was never brought to the floor for a vote. Why? Probably because it eliminated the deficit by 2021 at the time when it was introduced. It is progressive tax scale, which hits the upper percentages higher. Those that aren't paying their fair share of taxes. It's the end of it that the middle class is carrying the water for the upper percentile of this country, which is actually a lower percentage of people. So yes, we need to do that. As far as military spending, we have to look at that deep. One thing is we need to get back to our military instead of paying for private contractors. Private contractors like Halliburton and Blackwater, I'm sorry, I think they changed their name this week to Academy, or recently. Point being is we need to start paying for our troops, not mercenaries. We need to make sure that when these troops come home that we're taking care of them and we aren't debating whether we are going to pay for their health care or not. These are things we need to address. addressed. So we do need to make cuts in our military, and it's to those facets that aren't our military. Last time I checked, the United States Marines protect our embassies, not Blackwater. Thank you.
This is about as serious an issue I think we're going to face as a country. I mean, I hope that we are going to come together on this, because if we don't, we're still arguing about this 10 years from now, we are all in deep trouble. We are projecting with the president's budget $1 trillion in deficit over the next 10 years, every single year, which means we have to borrow every single penny of it. And that is not going to programs like Medicare and Social Security, which has a dedicated funding stream. These are very different issues. So I think two things happen. If you look at what the world will look like without U.S. leadership in the world, turn on your TV today. All of the things that you see happening, Russia throwing out the USAID the day before the General Assembly at the UN, was designed to send us a message. China telling the United States that you can't have your ships in the South China Sea was designed to send us a message. 40% of all the world's trade goes to the South China Sea, and we've been there for 236 years that we've been a country. You have the Middle East standing up and clearly giving a signal to the United States that they're ready for a more of an aggressive contact sport engagement when it comes to diplomacy. That's dangerous for all of them. I don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat. They killed an American ambassador in Benghazi. Not a Republican, not a Democrat, not President Obama's representative, our representative, an American representative. This is as serious a problem as I have ever seen. So when you start at the military, serious mistake. We've already put in about $500 billion of cuts over 10 years that we agreed to in bipartisan way, by the way, which I thought was good. To go further into the military when the world is less stable and less secure is dangerous for who we are and what we stand for and our economic prosperity here at home. That is really concerning to me. So are there ways to get after the deficit? Yeah, we're the only body that's passed a budget. Matter of fact, this president, think of this, the Senate hasn't passed a budget in 4 years. And this will be the first president in our history who has never signed a budget into law. And we wonder why our budget is so screwed up. Why we're $1 trillion in debt. This is serious business, and we have at least put out a plan to get us on a glide path to balancing it. And by the way, this one isn't even going to be anytime soon. Yes?
I have follow-up. First to Mike. I didn't hear whether or not you would include a tax increase in that plan.
This is the great thing about where we're at today. This is the first time I have ever felt that in a bipartisan way, numbers in the Republicans and numbers in the Democrats will come together on fundamental tax reform. I've been there a while. I'm a flat tax guy. I believe that's the right path. Eliminate tens of thousands of pages of rules and regulation that nobody can really follow. And try to get to a place where there's certainty in what the tax code says. And go to a system that allows our businesses to compete overseas, which is why we're not globally competitive today. I really believe that. And if that means reducing or eliminating loopholes, not loopholes, but deductions that were given by Congress, I'm for it. Now there's debate if reducing a deduction raises someone's taxes, is that a tax increase? I don't think it is. I think if we can get to that fair, flatter tax in a bipartisan way, we will all win. And we'll have, I argue, if you look at what happened after the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia went to a flat tax system and their revenues went through the roof because people knew what they had to pay. I think Americans generally want to pay a fair rate, but they'd like to know what they have to pay. If we do this, I think in that regard, I will support it, and I will support it with cuts. There has to be cuts. Our recommendation was go back to 2008 levels, and there has to be a fundamental change in the way we collect revenue in this country.
You mentioned tax on the rich, but middle class use the benefits of government as well. Should they pay a tax increase to eliminate the deficit?
It's all an equitable thing. If it calls for it, then it is. I'll be the first to sit here and say that I'm a firm believer in our social contract. And what that means is if I've got to pay a little bit extra to ensure that we have our military, that we have our roads, that there's a public education, things that I benefited from and my kids have benefited from and I want my grandchildren to benefit from, then it shouldn't be an issue. This is the United States of America. It's our responsibility to do everything we can to make sure that it is there for future generations. So we come up with a couple extra pennies to help out this country, or dollars on an equitable level for everybody, of course. It's our responsibility. We claim about leaving a legacy for our kids. Well, let's step to the plate and do it. Let's quit having these whining discussions that are getting us nowhere. For the last 2 years, we've been in gridlock. Why? Because we don't want to re-elect Barack Obama. That's what Mike and his colleagues continually say. We aren't having any real discussions. Where are the jobs plans? Where are the tax plans? Where are the thoughts and views for the American people? You were sent to Washington to represent us. Haven't been doing a good job.
Serious tax cutting measures by January 1, automatic steep cuts began to vital programs, including defense. How would you prevent reaching this crisis point?
Well, first of all, we have to do that. But he's talking about something called sequestration, which I thought was a horrible idea when we did it. It has a cliff, a significant cliff. And if it's allowed to go through, what that would mean is you're going to get 100,000 battle-tested Marines and U.S. soldiers will get pay slips. We will have industries from NIH and research universities, Michigan State University, are going to get pay slips. Some of these folks who are living off of this research money, which is important research. It's a cliff. It's not a surgical instrument. It is really dangerous. It means the Fifth Fleet has to turn around and come home. I mean, what a horrible message to send to our adversaries. So I argue we're going to get, I believe I'm an optimist, or I guess I wouldn't be in this business. But I believe after the election, and the pot gets turned down a little bit, that we will get an agreement. What will probably happen realistically is we'll get a 6-month extension, so whoever wins, whichever president wins, and whatever the makeup of both chambers are, will have an opportunity to get their legs on the ground to actually put a plan together to stop.
Chambers will have an opportunity to get their legs on the ground to actually put a plan together to stop it. We have to stop it. It's dangerous for the future of this country. It's dangerous for our national security. And the number of pink slips that will go out is unconscionable. We were hoping for a deal prior to leaving. Didn't happen. I think people made political calculations. I think the president believed it was good for him that this happened. I think some Republicans believed it was good for their side what happened. It was unfortunate on both sides because I argue this is such a serious issue. We will get an agreement at the end.
I just have to say that if I'm elected to serve you in Washington, I will never use the United States Marine Corps as a bargaining chip. What? Really? Last time you guys played this pink slip game and closing down the government, you cost everybody about 8 to 10% of their 401k programs. So what is the push for wanting to push this discussion again? Why can't we just pay our debt? If we have to increase taxes, let's get to it. Let's be realist about this, because you're right, Mike, the problem's not going to go away until we start addressing it and quit sweeping it under the rug.
Assuming that both sides, this is the next question, assuming that both sides are to blame for the current partisan gridlock in Washington, what would you do as an individual congressman to break the gridlock and move issues forward? Lance, you get to start.
First thing I would do is introduce myself to every Republican colleague. I don't need to make friends with the Democratic ones. It's about making friendships and extending that olive branch. We need to get the discussions going. We don't need to start treating each other like we are adverse enemies. This is the United States of America, not the divided states of America, where we have been heading in Washington currently. It's got to stop. We got to have people that aren't rank and file to their party leadership. Rank and file, anti-establishment. I think we know where we'll get the honest answer, and somebody that will work for all of our best interests. not just the corporations and that small select group of people that tend to pay campaign contributions.
Good news is we've already started. So a group of bipartisan members have been meeting to try to lay out some plans immediately after November. I was equally disgusted with the fact that
the President of the United States would use the United States as a partnership. I thought it was unconscionable. And I think his willingness to take the part of the military is unconscionable as well. It's the first article of the Constitution. I'm pretty sure as a member of Congress I know what I'm supposed to do. Just get to the first article that talks about our requirements to defend the United States and provide for the general defense. They thought it was so important they put it the first one. So what we've done is we've gotten a fairly sizable, probably too strong a word, but there is at least a dozen. We hope by the end of this there'll be at least 2 dozen to sit in the room, hash out some details, and then go back to our respective caucuses and offer real solutions. And that's how you do it in Congress. As I said, I've been fortunate. I'm one of the few members that got 2 bills passed in the last Congress. That was 60 Democrats in the Senate, 258 Democrats in the House, because I have built those bipartisan relationships, and they're important. I have some sharp philosophical advice on the way to handle the economy. I have some sharp philosophical advice on a health care bill, but it doesn't mean you can't find common ground. And I think I've been able to prove, not only just talk about it, but prove that I can do it. So that group, I think, will be important. We meet so that nobody knows who is a member of the group.
So that we can move the ball forward without any external pressure from the leadership caucuses or other folks who have political partisan interests in this case. That's why I think we'll get a product that can actually at least be set on the table for negotiation right after the election. I'm pleased with the effort.
It's been estimated that 70% of the funding for advertising that Michigan voters have seen in this presidential race come from nonprofit corporations that do not have to disclose the identities of their donors. And this comes in part because of the Citizens United ruling from the Supreme Court. Do you believe that this is acceptable on First Amendment grounds? Would you be willing to change this practice? Mike, can you begin?
I think we have to get to disclosure. The problem with this is that you have no idea who it is. And I have to tell you, I'll double down on my opposition to McCain-Feingold. It created these external third-party groups. If you want to know what was causing division in America, it's that these groups who are funded on the outside get up in the morning and their whole goal is to either hate Republicans or hate Democrats. And they do it 365 days a year, election years or off-election years. I think it has been horribly divisive to our political system. And it's cancerous, and we better do something about it. So this new ruling allowed these groups to, you have no idea where the money's coming from. None. I think that's wrong. I think we ought to get back to full disclosure. If you want to have an ad, the Supreme Court has ruled it's free speech, got it. But at least under our system, we have the ability to say you can spend money in the campaign, but you at least have to disclose it. You should know who those people are. If you want to make your decision based on that, I argue we should be able to. Some of these ads, you know, I love kittens and puppies and dogs, and the other guy's a rotten dog, and we should hate him, right? That's what happens to these things. You have no idea. They leave those messages on your phone that so-and-so did X, and it's really awful and terrible. And by the way, we're the Organization for Free Society, God Bless America, and apple pie. That's all you can find out about it. That's wrong, and as I said, it's corrosive. I think this has been the most damaging thing to us solving huge problems for this country. Medicare, Social Security, the deficit. Because people get mired in their corners, and the fact that we have to meet in secret, this group, tells you everything you want to know. Because there's a lot of groups that want to get in there and influence what we hope is a bipartisan solution to what sequestration is going to be. And I blame it a lot on these third-party groups. We've got to do something about it. I think the first thing we've got to do is just make full disclosure so that we can make our own decisions about who they are and what they're doing.
the FEC, we pretty much have good disclosure. I can tell you that the same groups Mike's talking about that he doesn't know how they're being funded, like Americans for Prosperity, are the same people that have given him $10,000 this election cycle, the Koch brothers. So, I mean, big oil, we can get into that. Same people that are putting behind these 501c3s and all these slanderous ads. You're right, Mike, they do need to go away. But the only way that's going to happen is when we start to publicly fund our campaigns and get away from corporate dollars, get away from all that frivolous money. I mean, I'm proud to say I'm the brokest candidate in the country on the major party side. I won't take a corporate dime. I won't take the $50,000 from Koch executives, through $2,500 contributions. I won't do that. Money has tainted our political process, and the only way it's going to change is when we elect those people that are willing to stand up and say enough is enough. Mike, if you were worried about that money, you don't take it. It's plain and simple. And when you look at your position on the Energy Committee, and you look at the fact that you took $1,000 from Don Blankenship to change some regulations on the mining industry, which resulted in the death of 28 coal miners later on the following spring, we can just call that blood money now. Thank you.
You want to respond to that?
Sure, absolutely. I spent my life in public service as an Army officer and that age. Character and integrity has been not important for just me, but my family. So for someone to make that accusation is disgusting. Now, you may be bought by campaign contributions, but if you are, sir, you're in the wrong business. You can't buy me for $100, $100, or $1 million. Apparently, you go cheap.
I haven't sold anything, Mike. I don't sit on the phone for 8 hours a day soliciting donations. I don't wait for the Chamber of Commerce to hold a fundraiser for me every time I'm in town. When I look through your money and I see all the insurance companies and all the pharmaceutical company executives, you're right. You don't sell yourself cheap. You got about $5 million in your bank accounts between your Mike R PAC and your PAC. So no, you're not cheap. You sold us out really good.
Let's move on. Vance, you'll get to start this one. How do you reduce our dependence on foreign energy supplies and build energy self-reliance in the U.S. without contributing towards global warming?
The heat's picked up. I think we should have picked up on that solar energy a while ago. But it's about green manufacturing. We need to get to solar energy, wind turbines. We need to, if we don't ruin our water through hydrofracturing, we need to harness the hydroelectricity that this great state of ours can provide the country. These are things we need to look at. We need to start getting, behind our technologies and start being creative once again. The thing that made this country great, that creative industrial spirit, which somewhere along the line we lost. We think it's in foreign oil, and that's going to be the national security effort. Well, when you look at Enbridge Energy, my question is, what do they have to benefit American consumers? That pipeline that runs through this district is for European consumption. So you're right, we need to focus on it. We need to get away from this energy dependency we have on fossil fuels. It should have ended a long time ago. Because if we don't, there will be nothing here for our grandchildren. And I tell you what, that Enbridge pipeline is a bigger issue than environment. Last time you thought you owned your property, you're finding out you don't.
A couple of years ago, I introduced an all-of-the-above strategy. And so we can talk about wind and solar, and they are incredibly important for our future. But you have to walk there. You can't run there. We'd like our technology to be further along than it is. Unfortunately, it's just not there yet. So by giving $500 million to a company like Solyndra, on the back end of it, doesn't help anything for the research on the front end of it. If we're going to make investments, we need to do it through research and development. So you need all of the above. You need American production, you need nuclear, You need wind, you need solar, you need biomass, all of those things. And so I introduced a bill, go online and check it out, that would allow us to do all of those things, so that we're working toward a goal in the future to be less dependent on foreign oil. And we do that through a combination of all of these things. And if you don't, what happens is you end up going from $1.87 to $4 a gallon. Now, some think that's okay. I think that is a fundamental violation of the social contract, that I get to live anywhere I want and commute to work because it's good for my kids at a school, or I like the country. So when you try to do these policies that are ahead of the technology, I argue you make a serious mistake. I believe in giving money to Michigan State University for that research so that some commercialization can happen at the end of it when it's ready for your use. When we get ahead of that and spend all of that money, a tremendous amount, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars wasted because you're trying to make a market out of a product that isn't ready yet. I think our goals are the same. I think our approach are vastly different. And the way we propose to do it, we can actually get there. It's just going to take time. I think that's the most sensible, most reasonable way to get to solar and wind and all of the things that we would love to have happen, but our technology isn't quite there. At the same time, $4 a gallon isn't acceptable. You have to have domestic production to get there so that we can continue to have the $30 or so that we've ended up having to pay over the last 4 years every time we fill up because of our policy.
Time for one last question, and then we'll go to closings. The passage of Dodd-Frank, Mike, you get to start with this. The passage of Dodd-Frank was the legislature's response to the collapse of the mortgage market in 2008. Was it appropriate? Mitt Romney says he'd like to repeal that. Would you favor keeping it, tweaking it, repealing it?
I think we can tweak it. The problem is it was an overreaction. And I think it was a serious overreaction. So what you have to look at the end result. IPOs are down in the United States. I mean, for the last few years, we have lost the IPO vote, initial public offerings, companies that develop and start in the United States. That's a huge problem. If you talk to people who invest, they'll start or cite Dodd-Frank as one of the examples. It is so onerous and so burdensome that they're going to go someplace else. Canada is actually doing exceptionally well after the passage of Dodd-Frank. And it's not because their companies are moving there, they're just headquartering and IPOing there to circumvent the laws here. So at the end of the day, we have some really tough decisions to make, I think. Do we want to be globally competitive? Do we want to enjoy economic freedom in this country so that we can make our own choices? Or do we want to slowly but surely become more dependent on the federal government? I worry about that. We ought to have that debate and that discussion. It's not who we are. It's not who got us to the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We did it through individual effort so that you sweat off your brow, you get to keep that risk and reward. When you have these huge regulations that are supposed to solve the problem, it ends up creating an offshoring of IPOs that will cost Americans jobs. I don't think we can hate corporations, we can hate Wall Street, we can hate big oil, we can hate anybody we want. That will not solve our problem of getting people back to work. And that is one of the main reasons these companies talk about taking that capital offshore. So we better fix it, we better fix it in a hurry. We better fix our tax code, we better fix Dodd-Frank, we better fix this massive healthcare regulation that's coming at us. There are 4,100 regulations pending in this government for small business in America, 4,100, including, by the way, small bakeries and spilled milk. Only in America, under this administration, could you get to regulating cookies and milk. That's unbelievable.
Well, when you address the financial crisis that happened, the Dodd-Frank bills is a minor solution. Brings a discussion to the table that we need to have. But, you know, we also need to send people that are going to look after their constituents. And we've had bills that have tried to correct the mortgage crisis, like the home affordable mortgage program that was voted against by a certain congressman. You know, that takes away relief from the middle class. There's one thing I support, and I haven't heard Mike bring it up at all, and that is putting back in place the Glass-Steagall. More importantly, new improved Glass-Steagall. Which we held the regulations of our financial institutions and made them accountable. And no, I'm loquacious stuff, believe it or not. I can give you the answer without talking in circles.
All right, that brings us to our closings, and since Mike got to start at the openings, Lance will begin 2 minutes for the closing.
First of all, I want to thank everybody that helped put this event on. Thank you very much, Press Argus, Voters Voice, the libraries, and the Chamber of Commerce. This is going to be a crucial election. Mike, we owe it to the constituents of the 8th District to have 2 more debates. One in Ingham County and one in Oakland County. They deserve to hear it. Since we have a new party in the Oakland County District, they deserve to hear us on the issues. Please don't avoid them. This is about being accountable and accessible to the constituents, not about us. Please say yes to that. The State Journal will be more than happy to put that debate on, as will the Oakland Press. I mean, it's an open invitation. I think we should do it just for the people. My name's Lance Enderle, and I want to represent you in Washington, D.C. Enough of the games, enough of the small talk. We need people that are going to be real changes and real solutions, that are willing to stand up for your rights, and tired of taking that corporate special interest, and even special interest in general, Mike. I will concede to that. Enough is enough. We need to get our voice back in Washington, and that's only going to happen when we send people there that are willing to change the game and stand up for what's right and fair instead of playing the game the same. Thank you very much.
But I can tell you one thing in my time in Congress, and as a guy who has actually had a proven record of reaching across the aisle to accomplish real things for real people, including the pediatric bill that takes care of children. I worked with Mr. Markey from Massachusetts. We don't have a lot in common on a lot of economic issues, but we saw a problem, we fixed it. So arm flailing, finger pointing, those kind of things sounds great. It's good, it kind of gets your base all fired up. Here's the problem. That does not fix one problem in Washington, D.C. It takes someone who is willing to sit down and have a rational conversation about the serious problems that we have. And I'm going to tell you, I think this is the most important election of my lifetime. If we don't get this right, all of you will slowly and surely become more dependent on the government. We will lose that one thing, the American dream, the one thing that we all passionately believed in. The ability to go out and try to start a business without 4,000 new regulations hanging over your head. The fact that you won't get to make decisions between you and your doctor. You're going to have to go through some unelected bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, that's just the truth. Those are the facts. So what we've got to do is we've got to realize we're going to take a step back, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to say it is serious. I think we can all agree that that's is an atrocious thing that we're doing to our kids and our grandkids for our immediate needs today. We've got to fix that and change that dynamic. Well, I can tell you, I've done it. I've worked with the president on national security issues where I thought he was right. I've told him when I thought he was wrong. I have worked with my friends in the Democratic aisle when I thought they were right, and we could forge some common ground on things like healthcare issues, pediatric devices, vaccines, biodefense. And I am willing, when I go back, to sit down with this bipartisan group and forge a solution for my children and your children. You don't have to vote for me. You don't have to like me. But at the end of the day, this isn't about running for student council. This isn't about scoring a few points. This is about the future of this country. It is that important. I hope I've earned your vote tonight. I look forward to working with you over the next 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to the sponsors, Press Argus, Voters Voice, Howell Chamber.